Hello everyone, my name is Asif Gill. I'm head of discipline software engineering and also a director of the DG SAS lab at the research and involved in research at UTS. UTS is a short word for University of Technology Sydney. So as part of today's talk I will take you through adaptive enterprise architecture as information. Particularly, I will discuss the data to decision architecture and how this new approach has been proposed and evolving in different parts of the organizations. Before I start, I would like to discuss what I really mean by data to decisions. So data, we all know, organizations collect a lot of data. They need to manage the data and then they analyze the data for different purposes. And that data could be structured, semi-structured, or unstructured. It's really about managing the data and being able to generate insights. So we have a discipline called data science to deal with that. And then when data is turned into insights, then it turns into information, something relevant. So then how we share those insights, how we manage those insights in the form of information. So that's a whole body of knowledge which deals with that. And that's what we call information science. And then finally, that information is used for making decisions. And that's relevant to decision science. And decision is all about how to make decision or when we're choosing between two or more alternatives based on the information in hand. So really, data to decision means how data is turned into information and then how information is used to make decisions or inform decision. And all this process could be automated, could involve some kind of workflow. So that's the basic concept of data to decision. Further to my presentation, why we need to care about data to decision approach in enterprise architecture. One of the way to look at that as we architects, what we do, we identify concerns. So let's start a concern as an example here. So let's say as a concern is our question what we need to answer. Let's say how organization or how we establish the architecture as information for supporting data and digital investment decision making in the complex unfederated digital ecosystems. So idea is that how we can use enterprise architecture, how we establish them as information, so then that information can be used for supporting data and digital driven transformations. So as an architect, we help organizations and stakeholders to make decisions. We provide them architecture information. Based on that, they can decide about their investment priorities in ICT and infrastructure. So that's the basic idea of the concern. So having that concern in mind, my whole presentation will spin around there. So let's talk about a little bit more about the decisions. So when we talk about the decisions, I have captured the whole data to decision approach in my recent book, not recent anymore, it's a couple of years ago book. This book is called Adaptive Enterprise Architecture as Information, and this focus on architecting intelligent enterprises. The basic premises of the book is that adaptive enterprise architecture can be used as information, and we turn that information then we can use for decision support. And this enterprise architecture book contains the enterprise architecture framework, which is a version 5 at this stage. In the version 4, we didn't have that protection. We have the protection layer, but we call it security, and there was no observability layer across the whole stack of the architecture. But in this particular version 5, I do have these two layers explicitly mentioned as protection, which cover the privacy, security, and trust, and then observability as well, which observes, monitor the whole stack, and then being able to provide insight about the whole architecture stack. With the whole architecture stack, which I call layers as well, at the top layer is the interaction layer, and then there's a human technology facility layer where human they interact with technologies or use technology within a certain facility, and they do in certain environment, organizational environment or outside the organizational environment. So all these human technology facility, their interactions happen within the environment, and that's where we start with the interaction architecture layer or interaction layer. So in summary, we have an interaction layer, we have a human layer, we have technology layer, we have facility layer, and we also environment layer. And around those layers, we have a mechanism what we call scan and sense the data. So it's all about search and discovery the data. And then you have enterprise analyze that data. And then based on that interpretation and analysis, which I call analytics and intelligence, you actually inform decision. You make decision and take action. And this loop goes on and on all the time across all the layers. So in this sense, when we say architecture information, so rather than having a static modeling, visual modeling, we model architecture layers as information. Once we have turned that into information, we can make decisions. So I start with the data across all the layers, then analytics, intelligence, and decision. These are the 4 things which can take the architecture data and turn into analytics, intelligence, and then decision making. So this is another view of those layers. So what is those on each layer? So interaction is all about interaction between human technology and facility, where the human layer got different other architecture domains, like say business architecture, information, and the decision architecture, and the social and professional. These are the 5 different domains of the enterprise architecture, which are independent of technology, sits in the human layer. And then human layer is enabled by technology. And that technology applications, data, algorithms, platform, and infrastructure architecture. So in the current context, we can have this application data and algorithm layer to make it what we call an AI systems architecture. So that architecture enables a human layer. And both human and technology layer, they rely on a facility, which could be a physical or a virtual facility, and that's what we call a facility layer. Within we have a spatial, energy, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, health and safety, and other ancillary architecture. So essentially, all those human technology facility architecture, they sits under the interaction layer. And that which is a starting interaction point for the end user. And this is also a mechanism to attach end user with the architecture. And then there's an environment within which these interactions happens, and then we need to protect and being able to observe as well. And architecture can be done at the different levels, and that's what we call system or ecosystem level. So that's the basic layers of the EA layers or enterprise architecture layers and their internal architecture domains. So once we understand what is the enterprise architecture, information is that, and it enables us from data to decision, but how do we make decisions? So there is a really good book on a decision analysis, what we call a foundation of decision analysis. You might want to have a look at that. But really the decision is when it comes to play, when decision is a choice between 2 or more alternatives, you need to pick one. That's where the decision making comes into play. It's a choice, right? And then that choice has certain parameters. It requires information on other things, which I'm going to look at the decision structure in the next few slides, or decision architecture as a starting point. So that really is the decision. So all what we do, we make decisions. If there are no decision, it means there is no change. It's just business as usual. We do not have to change anything. So the value is in the decision making. We all the time got to make different decisions. Further understand the decision making or decision, how we identify, describe, and model decision, we really need to go back to that decision science. So there are 2 things in decision science. We make decisions sometimes based on the intuitions, based on our experience and instincts. And then that's we call intuition driven decision making. And then there's another one is called rationality. We are the rational actors, and we're really looking at the data and facts to drive our decision making. But sometimes it's very hard to get all the facts in place to make a fully rational decision, or we do not have maybe time, or there's a cognitive load or stress or resources required to do that. So that's where we mix with the intuitions and with the rationality, both bring together, and what we call a boundary rationality decision making. Decision hierarchy actually decompose a decision at different levels. So at the very, very top level, you have a regulatory decisions, which you are documenting different acts and regulations. And those regulatory decisions inform the organization policies. And that's where what we call decision as given. And that's what we call decision maker who make policies. They document their decision in the form of a policy. And people then develop strategies, what we call strategic decision. And those decisions may be what we call to be decided later in a sense. They are deferred once the policy is there. They are made for a specific purpose and reasons. And those strategic decisions can further decompose into tactical and operational decisions on a day-to-day basis. So this is pretty much the structure of the decision hierarchy. You can call strategic decision also a decision we need to take now, and then we need to defer. So that's how given, decide now, or maybe decide later. So these are the three ways or three layers when we do a decision. There's a lot about how we can use AI and automating decision making, but it's important we need to have a human in the loop when we're making decision. Ultimately, humans are accountable for decision making, although you have automated the decisions. Decision wheels as three things. The idea is that all what we can do, we can control the quality of our decision based on the data, information, and decision we make. But the outcomes are not in our hand. We can all, because there are a lot of parameters around outcomes. Imagining I decided to, let's say, go from Sydney to Melbourne. I had all the information, everything, and I got at the airport. But my decision to go to Melbourne was impacted by the flight was delayed, which was the outcome I did not plan for, right? So my decisions are okay to going to Melbourne at the right time, but then the flight was delayed, so that was out of my control. So the outcomes are out of our control. All we can do our best to make sure we have a quality decision-making process. So focus on the process, because the actions and outcomes and impacts are really dependent on dynamic. And of course, those outcomes could be then their impact in terms of utility could be their measures, and satisfaction could be measured as well. So really, in terms of decision making, I normally really tend to focus on that part, because this is not in my control, and this is a matrix I can measure and where you can see there's a difference between the expected outcome, the actual outcome based on my decision. When we do the decision architecture, the idea is that what are the key elements in the decision architecture? What is required? How would you model? What you model? So when you model the decision architecture, you're looking at the decision maker. You need to model and who is making a decision, and the frame or the anchor or the mindset they have. And that based on that mindset or anchor, they have different alternatives or choices. So you list down all the choices in your architecture, capture them. And what are the preference? There might be choices, but there's some preference they might have. They want to focus on certain choices. And that's the danger where you come to the bias. We talk about the human bias, we talk about the AI bias. We need to balance the both. And then architecture is a part of that, is providing the information that has been plugged into this decision architecture to be able to inform the decision. And finally, the logic by which decision is made. What is the thought process? What's the decision-making process? So that's These are some of the elements, they are the core which describe the decision architecture. And we model them, we capture them, and that should be part of our whole enterprise architecture domain. Decision architecture has not been discussed in any length. This is something new I proposed in the last couple of years, and that's why it's included in the Adaptive Enterprise Architecture Framework version 5.0. So once you have documented the decision, they can go into the decision catalog. And here's a little example of a decision catalog. You can see that here. There's a decision name. There's a decision type. You can bring it there. You can description, put that, the frame, whether you are looking at buying or building some IT equipment or cloud. What are the alternatives, either Amazon, Salesforce, or AWS, and then what the preferences are. And then what is the decision, how important is a decision, dependency on that, and decision information available on hand, and the decision process or logic, and what are the other decision dependents. Is one decision is dependent on another, and who is the decision maker and who is the decision owner. So all these things can be captured in the form of a decision catalog. And that marks the end of my presentation about the data to decision architecture within the overall context of adaptive enterprise architecture. This presentation provides initial thoughts on that, but if you have further questions or you want to have connect with me, I'm happy to be connected. I'm happy to be reached out via email and also via LinkedIn. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you very much.